All right, Bicoastal, episode 5. We are back at it again. Missed last week because the mom was in town and wasn't trying to talk about Tyler Hero in front of the family. Didn't really want to blabber on and get in people's way. And so we are back at it now. A lot to talk about this week. We had the NBA Finals, the NFL, a lot of different incidents. Some coaches got fired, some people got death threats. We'll get right into it. And so the first thing I wanted to talk about was this Lakers NBA championship. The Los Angeles Lakers, they won their 17th title. LeBron James got his fourth ring. More importantly, Anthony Davis, the MVP of this series, the guy who should have got finals MVP, he got his first ring. And I thought he was robbed. I thought that he was the most important player on the court for them, just defensively, what he was doing, sticking his long arms out there, getting blocks. He blocked Kendrick Nunn tonight like 3 or 4 times. Um, he wasn't going easy on the little fella. And so, yeah, I thought AD deserved it. But to stay on topic, we'll talk about. LeBron James is now a top 10 player all time. I don't know what people were saying before the Jordan documentary aired and everyone was like, oh, MJ's back to being the GOAT. I don't think LeBron was ever even in that conversation to begin with, but I'll give him top 10 now. And this, people are going to call this a Mickey Mouse ring. He did organize this bubble. He was talking to Adam Silver. They were both in the NBA commissioner's office, just as the two of them. And they orchestrated this whole thing for him to get his fourth ring. So, like I said on the last episode, I don't know if this is going to count as like a fourth championship for him. I think in the books it will, but as the sports media, and I just got off the phone with Skip Bayless too, and I think it's going to be 3.1 rings. So we're giving him 10%, and I think he should be happy with that because it's better than nothing. So take it or leave it, Braun. But just to break down this series, I was really impressed with the Lakers. I was impressed with both teams, TBH. And starting with some of these role guys on the Lakers, Rondo is incredible. For him to be playing in that '08 series with Boston and being a key player on that team to then 12 years later he's going West Coast, Best Coast, playing for the Lakers. And dude had 19 points tonight. He was shooting the three ball. And if there's anyone who deserves a playoff nickname, whether it was playoff Damian that Joe Buck gave to Damian Williams or playoff P for Paul George, just giving it to himself. No, the real playoff someone is playoff Rondo. And he was great tonight. He was great all series, just with his passing ability. The IQ is incredible, and he watches a lot of film. He talks about that. I assume it's all basketball film and not like adult stuff. But yeah, he's doing well for himself, and he earned himself another chip 12 years later. So that dude's been on a journey. He looks. I don't think he can grow facial hair, and so he looks the exact same as he did 12 years ago. Maybe just a little more built. That core, he was looking pretty sexy. So congrats to him. And then Alex Caruso too is another person who I'll get to, like Duncan Robinson and the Heat in a sec, but Caruso is one of those undrafted guys where you kind of ask, where did this dude come from? And we saw him in summer league a few years ago with Lonzo and Kuzma, and it was clear that he could just jump out of the gym the way that he had some nice dunks then. And he can just play hard, and he grinded to earn a two-way spot to be on the Lakers. And Magic Johnson as a GM was, I don't know how to put it lightly, so I'll just say he was god awful. And he made the judgment call though to give Caruso the two-way deal, which I thought he should have been full-time NBA, but sometimes that's just how the oatmeal cookie crumbles. And so Caruso was huge in this series, just what he did. He's just so active on defense. And once again, I feel like you say this a lot about many role players where you're like, they do stuff that just doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And that was Caruso, I think, this whole playoffs, even this series, where like he's not a good shooter. I'll say that. Like, as much as I want to defend him and I have a ton of love for him, like he's really not a great shooter. I don't have faith when he takes a jumper, but he's just so active in the sense that he's always like deflecting balls on defense. He's diving for stuff. He's blocking shots. He's just up in a player's grill all the time. Um, so Caruso, I mean, props to him. He's an NBA champion, and he truly earned it. And proud of him. He's an Aggie boy. Texas A&M, obviously we hate them for not being socially distanced or whatever, but he was the one positive thing about Texas A&M this weekend. And then I was going to talk about Kuzma and Danny Green, but I'm going to go real quick about KCP. KCP was the third best player on this team. I brought this up 2 weeks ago when I was on here, but Kuzma talks a big game. He posts a lot on social media. He's always showing his transgender outfits or whatever he does. And at the start of the year, he was the one even saying himself that he was the third option. He was the third best guy on this team. And I mean, we saw this playoffs, like who that real third guy is. And it's contagious. It's Caldwell Pope. He hit big shot after big shot in this series. He had 16 points tonight. He just came up huge for them. And Caruso said in an interview like 2 nights ago, he said, it goes LeBron, AD, they're the two best by a mile. And then he said, our third best player is whoever's open. And KCP did his thing to get open and get the shots, and he hit them. So props to KCP. Where I'm going to switch gears here is with Danny Green and Kyle Kuzma. They were both terrible. Like, would I give either of them a ring? Probably not. I think Avery Bradley probably deserves a ring more than those two guys. They contributed, like they got minutes and they played defense. Kuzma didn't play defense, but Danny Green played some defense, and sure, you can give him that. But the missed wide open 3 in game 5 for Danny Green, just the terrible shooting in general. Like he's trending every single Laker game for just how he's unable to hit open shots. And we heard today he got the death threats, or his wife was getting death threats because he missed that shot. I thought that was too far. Like, I don't think you should be like threatening someone's life. If anyone should get the death threats, it should have been Kyle Kuzma. But no, I mean, it's not life and death for Danny Green. Like he's fine at times. And once again, I thought he was going to bounce back, have a big game tonight and redeem himself, but he wasn't great. He did not hit shots. So I don't know. The Lakers have to figure out some of their pieces. I say they trade Kuzma as soon as possible because his value is probably as high as it's going to get right now, and get someone who can actually contribute on defense and not fall for every head fake. And his defense is so bad. Like the 4-point play he allowed to Robinson in game 5, the constant biting on pump fakes. Yeah, he's an NBA champion by the book, but let me tell you, if there were 5 Kyle Kuzmas on the court, you're looking at a JV high school game. That's all I'll say. So that kind of covers it for the Lakers. I'll talk real quick about the Miami Heat. Shout out to Miami. I mean, I think they deserve a ton of credit for even making it that far. Like, nobody thought that they would make it to the finals. Everyone thought that it was going to be Bucks in 4 or 5 when it was Miami versus Milwaukee in that second round. And so they're a severe team. They're a fierce team. And last time I was on here, I compared them to Loyola Chicago in their Final Four run because they just have a bunch of guys where someone can have the hot hand one night, and it's not all centered around like one or two stars who call themselves a king. They've just got multiple people who can do it, and I think it's evident that they're led by Jimmy Butler. I mean, what he did in Game 5, just playing the whole game. I'm pretty sure he played 47 out of the 48 minutes, and he hit shot after shot. You could tell they were exhausted tonight. They really gave it their all just to stay in it in Game 5. But, I mean, credit to how this team fought. I think that they have a really bright future too, and I think it'll probably be the Celtics and Miami who are battling in that Eastern Conference Finals for years to come, because they're both still very young teams. Unless Giannis can figure it out in Milwaukee, but I don't think anyone's going to join him. I don't think he's going to get another superstar to go to Milwaukee. I mean, I don't want to go to Milwaukee for like 2 days, so I don't think anyone's going to want to go there for a full year. But just so many weapons. Tyler Hero, we can talk about him for a sec. Probably the blackest player on their team, just with the way that he talks. He's from Milwaukee, but yeah, you wouldn't really know. Just listening to him, you'd think that he was Ludacris or something, the rapper Ludacris. And he's just so confident the way that he can hit shots. And he's like, even if he's 0 for 8, he'll still pull up for a 3 with, a minute left in the fourth quarter. He just thinks it's going to go in all the time, which is great to see. And it's kind of a shame that he fell so far in the draft. He was like the 14th pick, I think. So that's pretty crazy. And then another player who went undrafted, actually, Duncan Robinson, is probably the best story from this whole finals. I mean, the man, like, leading up to him leaving Michigan, he didn't even think he was going to be playing basketball anymore. Like, there was a tweet that went viral from Mark Titus, who works for Fox Sports, who he got a text from Duncan Robinson like 3 years ago saying, "Hey, Mark, I'm looking for a job outside of college. Wondering if you could hook me up at the Ringer," because that's where Mark Titus was at the time. And it seemed like his career was coming to an end. And even Duncan Robinson himself thought that. And for him now to be lighting it up, scoring 26 points in Game 5 of the finals, like, he's one of the best shooters in the NBA. Like, just the way that his confidence has grown too. I mean, he is probably scared to shoot at certain times, but I really do think it's like him or Kendrick Perkins for the best shooters of this last decade. And he's really, he's impressive with what he does. And so credit to him there. He's going to keep fighting. That he's going to be working his ass off in the off season to keep going. That's just the type of player he is. So, yep, shout out to Duncan. And Duncan also looks like a fraternity pledge master. I mean, he looks like he could be rushing a fraternity just with his sort of baby face and the spiked hair. People compare him to like different villains of cartoons, and I see it all. I mean, he's interesting looking fellow, but great player. Who else on the Heat? I mean, Jimmy Butler, like, let's give him his fucking flowers. Like, he gets shit on all the time for being overly competitive or too fierce on his teammates. There was the stuff with like the Timberwolves where he was calling everyone soft, and he supposedly like won with the third stringers one day at practice. I don't know if there's any truth to any of that, but there was talk that he was just a locker room problem, but it doesn't seem like he was a locker room problem in this playoffs. I mean, he was the leader of this team. He put the team on his back, and I think that he really did cement his legacy in a sense with some of these finals games, like the 35 points in Game 5, trading bucket for bucket with LeBron, which Jimmy Butler might be a better all-around player than LeBron. I think he probably proved that in Game 5. But I think Jimmy's on everyone's radar now in terms of like elite players because he's always been an all-star. Like he's always been a good player, but I mean, man, did he shine on the biggest Mickey Mouse stage? Like he was great. So Jimmy's doing his thing, and Lakers and Heat, they made it a good series. The Heat extended it longer than I thought it would go. I thought it would probably be Lakers in 5, but credit to them. I mean, they fought hard, and I think most importantly for them is they have a bright future, and they should be good moving forward. The one thing that I'm going to end with for the NBA is people are calling it a Mickey Mouse ring. They're calling it a fake finals. I don't really know if those same people would be saying that if it wasn't the result that we saw. LeBron James won his championship, and like I said about the sports media, we're giving him 10% of a finals ring. However, if someone else had won, like it's funny to think if the Clippers won, people might be saying different stuff. People might be like, oh, Kawhi got another ring. Kawhi's the best player. If the Bucks won, people would probably be giving Giannis full credit. And I'm not even a huge LeBron fan or anything. I think that he does a lot of corny, cringy stuff. But I feel like we got to give him credit here. I think that they, despite not playing like the biggest threats, they earned it. They won the championship, and it's the Clippers' fault for not beating the Nuggets, and it's the Bucks' fault for not getting past the Heat. Like those teams lost to weaker competition, so it's not really LeBron's fault that he didn't have to go and play against them. So that's kind of another way to look at it. Obviously, people are biased, and there's many people who have made a career out of hating or loving LeBron, so they'll see it the way that they want to see it. Cool. So that's like 18 minutes of me talking about the Lakers. I think we can move on because honestly, I don't think anyone even watched the finals this year. So the NFL, we'll switch gears. Watched a couple of the games today. I'm kind of pissed off because like the stats generator on Google, like if you just search for a game and the end results, the stats usually show up like individual stuff with players and their passing yards, passing attempts, like rushing. That's all on just straight up on Google when you search it, and it's not appearing today. So I feel like someone took a day off in the ESPN or NFL offices. I don't know why those stats aren't up there, but someone was getting brunch or someone was hungover. It's all good, but did see that the Cardinals, they got the win over the Jets. We'll start with a boring game. Kyler Murray was looking like the top dog until the Lions game where he had 3 picks. He didn't play great last week either, but against the Jets, anyone will do well. I mean, that young Denver QB did okay against the Jets last week. So Kyler Murray still, I mean, his future's great. I think the Cardinals are like well on their way to having a future. It won't be this year, but it'll be soon. And Hopkins has that chip on his shoulder. And I guess talking about DeAndre Hopkins, I'll transition into some of the coach firings. So Bill O'Brien got canned. I think just as the coach, like as the GM, he's probably still there making decisions. But he's out as coach. He's no longer doing that. And I think Texans fans, they want DeAndre Hopkins back. I imagine they're like, well, this idiot made this terrible decision, and now we're getting rid of him. Can we get a redo on that trade? I mean, unfortunately, Barbara, that's just not going to happen. What's happened. So the Cardinals have Hopkins. The Texans are shit. They've got Watson, but how well is Deshaun going to do? Who knows? So that sucks for them. That franchise is in trouble. Maybe if J.J. Watt screams at the camera a couple more times, they'll start to win games, but we just don't know. So the other firing happened today, actually, which was Dan Quinn, who was the Falcons coach. 4 years overdue, I think, with him getting fired. I mean, after the Falcons Super Bowl or the Patriots, I probably would have canned him like tuna, but they stuck with him, and the Falcons have continued to be mediocre as a result of the decision. Um, they lost today. They lost to the Cowboys, blowing a huge lead. They blew another lead last week against a team who's escaping me. But, I mean, these coaches getting canned early on, it's not a good sign. And you hate to be a fan of one of these franchises. The Falcons seem promising with great receivers like Ridley and Julio Jones is also good. But I don't know, Matty Ice is getting old. He kind of chokes when it's game time, so that's something there too. But so that's news as far as the coaches' firings. The other thing I did want to talk about too was Dak Prescott, the injury today, which I don't know if they announced what the full thing is, but it seemed very serious where his knee bent backwards. He was getting carted off. He was crying. Um, it sucks for him. You know, Dak, I think, had a rough COVID. He had a rough off season where he wanted what he deserved money wise, and Jerry Jones didn't want to give it to him, which I somewhat understand because I don't think Dak has really like proved a ton as a QB. He's talented for sure, but I think it makes sense not to give him money close to what Mahomes is getting. But as far as the injury, like it really sucks because the Cowboys were on their way to being 8-8 and doing strong things like they usually do. But like I said for Dak, I mean, it sucks he didn't get his money in the offseason. Obviously, he's had a ton of terrible personal shit, which I try to keep it pretty fun-loving when I talk on here. But, he lost his brother. He talked about depression. Then he had media analysts like Skip Bayless tell him that he shouldn't be complaining about stuff like that. And I understand his frustration. Obviously, people around the league showed support to him, and they were so happy that he was able to speak out about his depression, which I think is so important. We've seen it with guys like Kevin Love and DeMar DeRozan in the NBA. And so happy that he's been able to do that. But once again, it just sucks that he's down injured, and we'll see what the Red Rifle can do. Andy Dalton got the win today. Got the win against Mr. Turnover and the Giants, Daniel Jones. So that's that for Cowboys Giants. And then, fuck, my voice is kind of cracking. Long time to be talking. So the other thing was Browns got the win today against the Colts and Phillip Rivers. So the Browns, Baker Mayfield, I mean, they're 4-1. He still has more commercials than wins, which is tough. He has a lot of those progressive insurance commercials. Hulu has live sports. I don't know. I think he's done enough to show that he'll probably continue to be starting QB. They've kind of had a cakewalk as far as wins. The Cowboys win that they had was pretty impressive. I thought that he looked pretty good there. But we'll see. I'm still not like fully sold on Baker Mayfield as being an NFL QB, but I'm sure that's what he wants. I think he wants the doubters. He wants people counting him out. So we'll see what he continues to do. The other big surprise today from the NFL was the Raiders beating the Chiefs. Apparently Derek Carr is good all of a sudden. I know that Mariota is a better player, but Derek Carr today was doing well. 3 TDs, had the 1 pick. And then Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs offense, like they 24 points on the Raiders. Like they just couldn't get cooking. They couldn't do anything. And I don't know if Mahomes is spending too much time with Aaron Rodgers, and that's why he forgot how to win. Too many State Farm commercials is what they're doing. I think it also might be the fact that he's probably spending a lot of time with his brother doing TikTok dances or whatever the hell those look like. And so he's just not focused. We know that Lamar Jackson's a better quarterback overall, but I think Mahomes is kind of solidifying that for us by playing poorly. So the last thing I had for the NFL was the man Jimmy Garoppolo, who is absolutely terrible. And I think it was probably just an awful sign for Niners fans that they had Jimmy Garoppolo when right after he got paid his money. You know, he played the 5 games for the Niners and won a couple. I think he went undefeated in like his 5 starts when he took the job, and they paid him out the ass. They paid him like $100-something million. And it was probably a red flag to them when that first off season as the starter, he went on the date with professional nutsucker Kiara Mia, the porn star, which, I mean, I'm a huge fan of her, so I was jealous of him. So maybe it's just hatred coming from me. But you could tell he lacks judgment when he did something like that. He went on a public date with a girl who eats nuts for a living. So kind of knew from there that he wouldn't be a great QB. Obviously, the Niners were in the Super Bowl last year, not because of him. It was the Peyton Manning effect where you kind of get carried by the defense, like Peyton did for the Broncos. And so, I mean, it makes sense that Jimmy GQ got benched. He had a terrible interception today where it was just wobbling. It's something that I think a 4th grade girl could have thrown a pass like that. He doesn't have the stuff, and he's more focused on extracurricular activities like hanging out with sluts and doing that whole thing. So that's where I go with the NFL. Not a very eventful week. Tom Brady forgot it was 4th down. There were a couple things here and there, but yeah, I think that'll do it as far as our NFL segment. One thing that I wanted to discuss was, I don't think this will be a segment that I do full time, but it's something that I wanted to talk about for this episode because I had something happen this weekend. So I'll call this segment Weekend Extravagance, which sounds pretty lame, I know, but I had something happen yesterday that I feel that I should tell just for the sake of content and entertainment. And it was that I threw up from drinking for the first time in over a year at least, first time in a long time. And how it happened was I went on a date, went on like a Hinge date with this girl who I've met one other time. And the date went pretty well, I think, but we went to this one bar in Santa Monica and we both got the same cocktail, and it was strong as shit. Like it had 2 different kinds of rum in it and then pineapple juice. And I know I feel like I sound very fruity sharing this information that I got a cocktail instead of a man's drink, like a beer. Yeah, I don't know. I should have just got a beer in hindsight, but I got this cocktail that was like $12, which that's LA for you. And it was strong as shit. Like I'm pretty sure there were 2 or 3 shots in there. It was that strong. It was fucking heavy. And drank the whole thing because I was on a date and I didn't want to be a wimp. And she finished hers too. By the end of the date, I was like very buzzed. And, you know, I went on my way home afterwards. Didn't get any action because it's COVID, trying to be safe. And yeah, that was that. So no head, no nothing. But I went home after, and then my roommate hits me up, and he's like, "Hey, you know, I'm going over to our friend Drew's house." I'm like, "Yep, I'll join you guys." I go over there. We have a couple IPAs. We go to a bar nearby, a couple more IPAs, and then the next thing you know, I'm yakking in the bathroom sink. I threw up in the fucking sink, not the toilet, because I'm an asshole and I was hammered. And it was just a ton of salsa chunks coming out because that's what I had for lunch was Mexican food. So you could just kind of see the tortilla bits all in the sink. Um, so that was very extravagant. And waking up this morning, I had the biggest headache ever. So I'll probably take a break from drinking for a while, at least like 1 or 2 days, because that was a little too hot to handle. And so that was my extravagant weekend event. I don't think anything like that will happen next weekend. I'm probably going to tone it down, just hit up some models or some sluts like I usually do, and just keep it moving. So this last topic, which I introduced last segment, it's called Top 5, and it's where I pick a category and I rank my top 5 favorite things, people, whatever it is I choose. Now, I did one on fast food. I did that one a while back. I did one on favorite sports last week or 2 weeks ago. And today's a kind of a different one. I'm going to do the top 5 comedians of mine. And before you blow your load listening to this, or maybe not blow your load, but before you get your panties in a bunch, this comedy rating that I'm going to do, this comedian rating, it's going to be the second tier comedians. And so what I mean by that is like you've got your up here where it's like Louis C.K., Jim Gaffigan, Bill Burr, all the people who are showing nuts and jerking off in green rooms, Dave Chappelle, like all those classic guys. They're like the first tier. They're in the number one. But then you've got, in my eyes, a second tier where it's like people who are, I think all of them are in their like mid to late 30s, everyone that I think of on this list. And so that's what I'm going to preface, is that my list here is going to be mainly people that I hear from the podcasts. It's going to be those types of people that I'm a fan of. And so with that, here we go. So for me, my number 5 podcaster / comedian right now is going to be Whitney Cummings, actually. And that's probably a shock to some people. People are like, oh, she's not that funny. But I mean, I really enjoy her podcast. She has a ton of different guests on there. She had like Miranda Cosgrove. She had Amanda Cerny, who's talented or not talented. She's known for doing nothing. So Whitney Cummings has had a lot of good guests on there. Other great comedians appear on her pod, and I just love her whole setup. I think she does a good job, like asking questions and keeping things going. I mean, as far as her stand-up material, like it's a lot of stuff about sex, which I understand. It's appealing. Like she's an attractive woman, and some of those headlines that you see on YouTube where she's like talking about getting pushed off after sex, or like thinking it's weird that men want to tit fuck her. Like I think those are all pretty like funny segments, and so I'll put Whitney as my number 5 in my top 5 list. Number 4 is going to be Nikki Glazer, another girl too, which I think is a shock to some people. People are like, oh, you're naming all women? Like, is this a Me Too bit that you're doing? Is this a part of the woke movement? Why aren't you naming some fellas here? But no, I'm naming women because I think they're actually funny. But once again, I mean, Nikki is similar to Whitney in my eyes, just in the sense that like a lot of her comedy is centered around sex. If you listen to a podcast from Nikki Glazer, a lot of the time it's going to be about like porn or hooking up. Also find her very attractive, but I think her comedy is really clever. Like you can tell she's an incredible writer. And she just has a lot of good lines. She has like one segment about using her vibrator, which I think that people who are willing to open up about just like the craziest, most insecure things, like normally as an audience, we find that funny. So Nikki Glazer is probably number 4. I really enjoy listening to her on podcasts and such. One sec. For me, number 3 is going to be Theo Vaughn. So we've got a man in there. We've got a white man. So, and all the people I picked in here are white. So, who knows? I might be a part of the Proud Boys. I don't know. But so Theo Vaughn is number 3 for me, and he's just like the funniest, most random dude in the sense that like he'll start his sentence and he has no idea where the hell it's gonna go. He'll talk about stuff where he like times where he grew up and like some molestation that he dealt with, and just there's all these like random funny stories that he'll have that are just so intriguing to me, and I'm just like always fascinated to hear what he has to say. His comedy's great too. His bit about white privilege not really being a thing in his neighborhood, I thought that was like a great segment. So Theo's another podcaster slash comedian that I really do enjoy. So then number 2 for me. So right now we're at Whitney's number 5, Nikki Glazer's number 4, Theo Vaughn at number 3. Number 2 for me is going to be Andrew Santino and Whiskey Ginger. Whiskey Ginger is a great podcast, and I feel kind of bad because I didn't know who Santino was until the show Dave. Like I didn't until he played Lil Dicky's best friend in that show. Like I didn't know who he was, but after seeing, I mean, how funny he is as an actor, I checked out his podcast. I saw the one with Lil Dicky, and I'm like, all right, this dude's really witty. Like he's just cracking jokes here and there that are hilarious. And so he's my number 2. I've never really seen much of his stand-up, which I think it's really funny how in 2020, like we can love a comedian or we can love a certain person, and I don't even watch their like main art form or their main source of income or their main title. Like I've never even seen a Santino bit, but I just love him as an interviewer. Like he asks people really funny questions. He keeps the conversation going. And it's really enjoyable that way. And then, so for me, so we've named the top 4. Number 1 for me in terms of comedians, it's Chrissy D. Chris DiStefano is the fucking funniest dude on the internet right now, in my opinion. And I think a big part of it is the podcast. Like he has a ton of funny stories about his criminal dad. And in terms of his stand-up comedy, he has a 10-minute bit about September 11th, talking about his experience like being in New York during the time. Like probably the funniest 10-minute set of comedy that I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of good stuff. You know, I've seen like Louis C.K., I've seen Gaffigan specials, I've seen Bill Burr, but I mean, these 10 minutes are fucking hilarious. So I recommend you check out that 10-minute clip. And he's just such a funny podcaster, like all his dad's stories. He has a great one with Bobby Lee on Bobby Lee's show, Tiger Belly, where he has a lot of fun jabs at race, and he's like not scared to be at least a little offensive because it's all in good fun. So yeah, Chris DiStefano is my favorite right now, and would really love to see a show with like him and Santino. I know they're on tour on the East Coast right now, but if they came to LA, I would for sure check that out. So yeah, that's my list of top 5. Number 5, we had Whitney Cummings. Number 4, Nikki Glazer. 3, Theo Vaughn. 2 was Andrew Santino. And then number 1, Chrissy D, Chris DiStefano. And so with that, I think I'm going to call it just for this whole episode of Bicoastal. Once again, I want to thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.